Well, hello. So this video is for actually last week's chapter 6 on formation prayer. My apologies, I didn't get my video out in time to get it in for last week since we went on vacation. But this week we'll get two videos, so you get bonus video this week. So this is going to be chapter 6, and then Friday, look out for the video on chapter 9. So I hope as you're working your way through this book, you're finding it helpful, and always know if you do have questions or you want to talk about something more, I'm available anytime. Send me an email, stop in at the office. You're always welcome to come on in and chat with me about this. I'm really enjoying going through this book again, and I hope you are enjoying it as well. So chapter 6 is on what Foster calls formation prayer. And I think really to sum up well what he says about formation and kind of some of these previous chapters too, this real inward process of kind of going inward and helping us to be grounded in who we are and knowing ourselves. I think the way that I would really describe that succinctly is to just simply say that formation is not so much about what we do, but how we receive. And that is to say, how we receive ourselves and how we receive the world around us. How do we allow it to impress upon us, allow it to form us? How do we allow the world around us? How do we allow ourselves to listen to it? And how do we allow ourselves to be with ourselves without immediately going into these spaces of either being overly judgmental or overly allowance, just allowing ourselves to do whatever we want or punishing ourselves for doing anything wrong. And that's really what Foster is really getting at with this whole concept of formation, is how do we receive ourselves? How do we receive the world? And then what's going on inside of us? What's the dialogue like when we do receive the world? In our in-person group study, we came back to this example a lot of imagine you have a really kind of annoying or grumpy or frustrating neighbor living right next to you, and every single time you go out to take your trash out or walk your dog or whatever, there's that neighbor and always doing something that just really irritates you. And take that experience and then we'll kind of see how these spiritual formation, these spiritual concepts relate to it, right? And so again, you have this sort of frustrating neighbor, and so you ask this question of how do I receive this? What's the internal dialogue happening whenever I have one of these interactions with this annoying, frustrating, whatever neighbor? Am I critical of myself because I always get frustrated? Am I critical of a neighbor because they're always annoying me? What is that conversation like? And taking some time to notice that, taking some time to reflect upon it, that's very, very much at what is one of the core central elements of the spiritual life, is just noticing, taking that time to experience and to receive what's happening inside. This is a lot of what Foster's been getting at in these chapters, and especially this one. And so we're taking notice of how am I being formed? And then, of course, we have to ask this question, what am I being formed into? And for us as Christians, of course, the answer is very obvious. We hope, we strive to be formed in the image of Christ, to be like Christ in our daily living. That's how we are formed. When I was a young person in about middle school, high school age, there was those very popular wrist bracelets that said, what would Jesus do? And that was a very popular sentiment coming out around that time. And it became a bit of a cliche, as I'm sure maybe you remember, but there's still something that's very resonant about it to me, about just the sense of, it does in some ways come down to that. If you're thinking about this neighbor, what would Jesus do? And there's that, maybe just that dialogue of, here's how I imagine Jesus might interact with this neighbor, and how have I been interacting with this neighbor? And there's a bit of a dialogue there, a bit of a sense of trying to understand what it is that I'm doing or what I'm not doing in terms of my own formation. And so there's this is when we talk about, and as we sit with this, we begin to talk to God about what we're seeing, what we're noticing, what we're feeling. We begin to pray these words, and we begin to say that, God, I notice this. Can you help me? You begin to notice, God, I notice when that neighbor always comes out, I'm frustrated. Can you help me with that? And can you help me be more patient? Or, God, can you help me speak my mind, maybe? Because maybe the thing they're doing is really not helpful. Maybe it's destructive to your property or whatever. Can you help me be gentle but yet firm in the truth of how this is affecting me? Whatever that is, you begin to have that dialogue. You begin to notice these things. And then you begin to take it to God. You begin to pray and say, God, help me. God, be with me. God, form me into that image of Christ. That is what formation prayer is all about, short and simple. But one last thing I wanted to note was on page 58 of the book, Foster highlights Dallas Willard's golden triangle of formation. Dallas Willard is a Baptist theologian and well-renowned for his spiritual guidance as well. He has a number of books out there if you're interested in learning more. He was a favorite of my dad's, and so I've read a few of his works. He's got some very interesting thoughts, but again, he comes from a bit of a different perspective than us as Lutherans. But I absolutely commend his work and recommend what he has to offer as well. But in this book, Foster is highlighting his golden triangle of formation, and it has these kind of 3 points. And I want to kind of briefly go through those and just again mention how they relate to that spiritual life. So the first point of all of these classic disciplines of the spiritual life, this is the first point of the triangle: solitude, fasting, worship, celebration, all of these types of things. These are the ways that we help ourselves kind of get to know ourselves. It seems sort of obvious, but there is a truth to a lot of us that are walking around in our world, and we don't have the self-awareness that is really key to the spiritual life. You may know somebody in your life. Again, we think about that neighbor who's always annoying you, and you may not know even why, but you start to engage in these processes of prayer, of solitude, of worship even, and you start to realize, oh, maybe this is why that neighbor is always frustrating me, when they always say that or do that thing. We begin to know who we are in relation to the world around us, who God has made us to be. That's that first part of the triangle, is knowing ourselves. And then we move into that second part of the triangle, where he mentions the continual interaction with the movings of the Spirit of God. I like to talk about this as expression. We are expressing who we believe God is in our lives, who God has made us to be, and where the Spirit of God is leading us. We begin to move in that Spirit. We begin to express ourselves, not only just in this quiet place of prayer, but now we begin to express ourselves out into the world. We have received the world, and now we give back into the world. We talked in our program, or our in-person class, and we talked about how Luther had a formulation of being freed from sin and death and all of these things in Christ, and being freed for the loving of our neighbor. And I think that kind of sums up well what we're talking about between those 2 points of the triangle of knowing ourselves and expressing who God has made us to be. We are freed from sin and death, and we are freed for loving our neighbor. So then finally we come to the last point in the triangle, which Foster highlights as being the patient endurance God develops in us by means of the various frustrations, trials, and temptations we face daily. And I think that this is what I like to call the unknowing. So we are in this place of knowing who we are, and then we go into this place of expression, but we know that expression doesn't always go the way we want. We don't always have exactly the experience we want in the world. Things don't always go our way. In essence, sin is still a reality. And so here is this place of unknowing again, this place of disorientation or whatever, or trial or temptation, as Foster mentions. And this is that place where, again, we come back to that first point. We come back to this place of prayer. We come back to this place of needing God. We come back into this place of finding God again in the solitude and our prayer life, wherever it may be. But you see how this relates, again, coming to the annoying neighbor. We might, again, start in that place of receiving it and having that sort of internal dialogue and bringing that to God. And then as we begin to express who we are, express the way that we hope to love this neighbor, even when they annoy us, we will either do well, or we'll find, that didn't quite work. It didn't quite go the way I wanted. And then we try again. So again, this is a cycle, you see, a sort of a movement in the spiritual life. And what we're really focusing on in our spiritual life is continuing that movement as best as possible. As I said in the last video, it's not about finding or discovering or containing God all of the time, but it is more about noticing the presence of God some of the time. I hope that in your reading and in your daily living, you are noticing the presence of God in your life some of the time. And again, always feel free to contact me, feel free to reach out to me to talk more. I always am open to discussing these sorts of things. So I hope that your study is going well. This week, our chapter will be chapter 9, which is, I gotta read it, the prayer of rest. And I will put a video out on Friday for that. Hope you all are doing well. God bless you, and we'll see you on Friday.